Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I'm Miss Lisa, and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about what I want to, that is science and math. And today we're talking about biology. And if you're taking this as a class, we're looking at chapter 26 in Glencoe Biology and Everyday Experience, but you're welcome to join us if you just want to hear about inheritance of traits. So we're going to talk about genetics. And I said in a couple of videos ago when we talked about sexual reproduction and mitosis and meiosis, I said we would come back to it. Today's that day. So what we're going to be talking about is called genetics. It's the study of inheritance. It was founded by a guy named Gregor Mendel. We're going to talk about him a little bit more, but it's why you have certain characteristics that you have inherited from your parents. So we have to go back and talk a little bit about some of those topics we talked about before when we were talking about mitosis and meiosis, and it is chromosomes. Chromosomes are the part of you that in every living thing that carries the genetic information. In your cells, the chromosomes kind of look like little worms, but then they can be spiraled up tight, or they can be loose, and then they look kind of like threads or spaghetti. We did a lab last year in my biology class where we took the DNA out of strawberries and we pulled it up onto a pencil and wrapped it around. It just looked like very fine threads as we pulled these strings of DNA. So chromosomes are made of DNA, and that is where the blueprint for the genetic information is for really making the proteins, which controls the traits that are expressed in you and other living organisms. So if you didn't watch the video on mitosis and meiosis, go back and watch it. Do that first and then come back. Okay, so on the chromosomes are what are called genes. And no, they're not blue genes or anything, but they are codes for traits. So you have a genetic code that tells what color your eyes are going to be and what color your hair is going to be, unless you've dyed it some other color than Miss Claire decided, or whoever, what color your hair is going to be. But if it's your natural hair, then it's controlled by genes that are on chromosomes. And we talked about in the other video how those chromosomes, how those traits are shuffled by the process of meiosis, where the sex cells are formed that have only half of the original chromosome material of the parent. Then the male and female sex cells get together, the egg and sperm, and then the new organism has a complete set, half from their mom and half from their dad. Of these two sets, though, you get a gene for hair color from your mom and a gene for hair color from your dad. But just how it is expressed is not a blend always. Often it's one or the other. And this is this idea of dominance and recessiveness. So say you get eye color. Now eye color, all of this doesn't exactly work. There's more to it. You could be a geneticist major where you major in this in college. So there's way more to it. I'm simplifying just to let you know. But we're just going to pretend right now that eye color is not as complicated as it is, and that my dad's eyes are brown and my mom's eyes were blue. Brown eyes are dominant to blue eyes. So I could have gotten a gene from my dad for brown or blue eyes, or my mom for brown or blue eyes. Now, my eyes are blue, and my dad's eyes were brown, which lets me know that my dad carried the trait for blue eyes, but it wasn't expressed. He didn't have blue eyes, he had brown eyes, but he had gotten the chromosome for blue eyes from one of his parents. I don't know which one, because I never met my grandfather, and I don't remember my grandmother's eye color because she passed away when I was like 4, I think 4. But so I don't remember her eye color. But anyway, he had to have carried the blue eye trait because my eyes are blue and blue is recessive. So if you have the brown-eyed gene and the blue-eyed gene, you're going to have brown eyes. If you have a brown-eyed gene and another brown-eyed gene, you're going to have brown eyes. And if you have a blue-eyed gene and a blue-eyed gene, then you're going to have blue eyes. So I got a blue-eyed gene from my dad. Even though his eyes weren't blue, it was hidden underneath. It was recessive. It was not expressed. And then I got the blue-eyed gene from my mom, and then my eyes are blue. So that's a little bit about how it works. So you get two genes, one from each parent for each trait, and if one of those is dominant, that is what is expressed. It is, so your genotype is that you have a dominant and recessive, but your phenotype, what is actually expressed, is just the dominant one. Recessive genes are not expressed unless you get it from both parents. Otherwise, the dominant thing is expressed. So your book goes through and talks about rolling your tongue, meaning this, not and I know I did that really bad. And also whether your earlobes are dangly or attached. These are things that are dominant or recessive, that whether or not it's expressed or not. Let's see. So we talked about that. Now, if both of my parents had brown eyes, but they both carried the blue-eyed gene. They both had a brown and a blue, but they both expressed the dominant one, which is brown. Could they have a blue-eyed kid? Absolutely, they could, because their traits split during meiosis, and so the cards are shuffled, and if their recessive trait from both of them are the cards you're dealt, then you would have blue eyes. You could just happen to get when all those cells split in meiosis, if you happen to get the recessive trait of blue eyes from your dad and the recessive trait of blue eyes from your mom, is it likely? No. It's more likely that their kids would have brown eyes, because brown eyes is dominant and they both carry the dominant trait. So how do you know? What are the odds of having these different traits? Well, what they do is a thing called Punnett squares, and then they fill them in and figure out the statistics. So if you had dominant, so anyway, sometimes your statistics is like maybe you have 25% of having a blue-eyed kid, depending on what the parents have, or maybe it would be 100%. If they're both dominant, then their kids are going to have brown eyes no matter what. Or if both parents are blue-eyed, their kids should be blue-eyed no matter what. Now, remember I told you that eye color is not that common, not that straight. Eyes can be actually damaged in utero, and eye color can change. Injury can change eye color. So a long time ago, they would say, if there were two blue-eyed parents and the baby was brown-eyed, they would be like, oh no, the mom was unfaithful. That is not the dad's. Check the eye color of the mailman, stuff like that. So that was like a joke. But it was probably devastating to some people, because actually the baby could have brown eyes if it had a developmental abnormality. If the baby had like an injury or something happen in utero in its eye development, the color can change. And a good example of that is David Bowie, the singer. That thing, which was also Ice Ice Baby. But anyway, Under Pressure, the guy, not Freddie Mercury, but the other one, David Bowie, he had two different colors of eyes. Do you have two different dads? No. It was that one eye had been damaged and it changed colors. So just because someone's eyes don't, or hair or whatever doesn't fit the exact prediction, don't cast doubt on the woman's integrity about who the baby daddy is now. So anyway, but these are just general rules, but there can be exceptions for different reasons. So So anyway, you'll get to read more about that, about how to fill out the Punnett squares. You will be doing that in your homework. And then being able to look at the genotype and figure out the phenotype, whether or not a trait will be expressed or not. Something is shown to be dominant if it's a capital letter, recessive if it's lowercase. You will also be growing some corn seeds in lab, possibly if you do that lab. Cleft chin is another one you'll look at. Widow's peak is one also that will show whether or not is dominant or recessive. So you can look at those traits. Now, Gregor Mendel, I told you I'd tell you about him. Okay, so he was a scientist in Austria, and he was a monk. He was a Catholic monk. Now, and what I wanted to tell you was that right now, where we are in human history, there has been a great divergence between science and faith. That faith and science are seen to be as opposed to each other. But I just wanted to tell you that one time it was not like that. The fathers of most branches of science, and I say fathers because most of them were men, back then women didn't have the freedom to do the things we have now. But the fathers of science were, for just about all of them, were Christians actually. And the reason why is because in the Bible it says that all of creation declares the glory of God. So people who were religious scholars would also study science, thinking that that would be a way to learn more about God and his attributes, and that they would learn more about him. So a lot of these fathers of scientists were also ministers, monks, whatever, because the heads of these branches of science, a lot of the early scientists were Christians because of that reason. And there's another thing too I was reading about. The guy who developed aspirin, he was a minister and a scientist, and that's just kind of weird to us now. But I was reading about it, and they said that like 1800s, 1700s, back when a lot of these sciences were being founded, and even earlier, that a lot of time the most educated person in a town was the pastor, was the minister. He was the only one who had been to college. And so he not only did pastoring, he would do whatever needed to be done with more education. So like legal matters, people would go to for the pastor. They would go if they were sick, like there wasn't a doctor. Well, we'll go to the pastor. At least he's been to college. Maybe he knows something. So the guy who invented aspirin, he developed it, he was a pastor, but he had been studying about medicine because he was the most educated person in his town, and his flock looked to him for medical guidance too. And he was studying, and he had read about how people had used willow bark from a willow tree to reduce fever and pain and inflammation. So he started experimenting with willow tree bark, which has the chemical very similar to what is our modern aspirin. And he even figured out the dosage of what we do for our modern dosage, which is take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. His dosage he would recommend his congregation when they came to him looking for help was the equivalent of 2 aspirin. Isn't that interesting? So Gregor Mendel was a monk. He was a religious man wanting to know more about God through study and science. And he started studying genetics. He would work in his garden. He had pea plants, and he would notice that if you cross-pollinated this plant with that one, what did you get? Now, was he the first person to ever do this? Absolutely not. Breeding animals, breeding plants goes way, way back. If you look in the Bible, they talk about, black sheep and white sheep way back to Jacob in the Bible. So, farmers have been breeding animals for a very, very long time that are advantageous in their traits, trying to get new traits. So they understood on some level breeding before this. But Gregor Mendel is the one who really made it science. He figured out the Punnett square. He figured out dominance and recessive. He figured out that this information is being passed on, And you can read about his work. You can read about the peas. They were wrinkled peas and smooth peas and yellow peas and green peas. And then he looked at flowers, white flowers and red flowers, and what kind of flowers do they make. Okay, so Mendelian genetics is what is dominant, recessive. You get a gene from each parent. If you get both recessive, you get recessive. If you get a dominant, dominant is expressed, and recessive is not. No blend, one or the other. If you get the dominant one, you have dominant. My dad carried blue eyes. It wasn't that his eyes were a little blue, a little brown. Nope, they were absolutely brown. But he carried blue, but he didn't express it. That's Mendelian genetics. But there is also non-Mendelian genetics, which was where things are actually blended. Where if eyes were non-Mendelian, then if your dad was brown and your mom was blue, you would have blue-brown mixed. It would mix in between. And I actually have a blood condition that is non-Mendelian. My mom had it, my aunt have it completely, where they are completely recessive, for which causes them to not make a protein that gives them a blood condition where they can't have certain anesthesia. And so when both my mom and my aunt reacted very badly to anesthesia, then and they figured out that we had this inherited blood disorder. Then we all went to the hospital and they tested our blood, and it wasn't yes or no, do you have it? It was what percent is it expressed. So my mom and my aunt had it completely, but me, my sister, and my brother have it a little bit. We like half have it because it's non-Mendelian. So I would react a little bad to the anesthesia, not as bad as mom did. That would be non-Mendelian genetics, because it's not just dominant, recessive, dominant. If you've got dominant, it's expressed. If it can blend. And actually, eye color is a little like that. If you notice, I said it's not exactly like this. Eye color is not just blue or brown. There are all these different shades, and it actually is dominant, recessive, but then there's this shading bit to it that is a little bit more. So anyway, genetics I think are very interesting. I think it's one of the best parts of biology, and I hope you enjoy it too. We will talk more about human genetics. That was sort of a genetics overview. Read the chapter, watch some more videos on how to do those Punnett squares and stuff, and on YouTube, and then come back and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about human genetics. So like, share, subscribe. Science is great. I'll see you next time.